around Edinburgh. My name's Ross Campbell. The pleasure of facilitating the call today. The Sports Union guys asked me to facilitate it, probably with a little bit of an eye on the past. I was fortunate to be sports president before the four on the call. After one other individual, and I'll let them, you can make your own mind up who's the oldest. But I've got that, and I've stayed involved ever since, and I'm delighted to be in the role of Executive Director of Orium. But fundamentally, volunteering is a huge passion of mine, sport is a huge passion of mine, and so is Heriot-Watt University. And that's something that you will see from your panel members today. So hopefully everybody, I should say, sorry, we're joined from colleagues and friends from across the world today. Particular mention to students who have logged on from Dubai and Malaysia. Fantastic to see to hear from you and have you join us. With your permission, we're going to focus on the Edinburgh campus, because that's what we have as a common theme today with the colleagues that we have on the call and presenting to you. But please do, the whole design of this seminar is around an ability to take this no matter where you are placed, because volunteering is global. And we know, speaking to Mushtaq and colleagues across in Malaysia, and David and colleagues over in Dubai, that's really a key theme for them as well. In advance, I hope you've had an opportunity to speak to or to look at the biographies of the four esteemed colleagues that we have on the call. I'll say so at the end, but delighted that you've given up your time. A huge thank you to the four of you. And I know our colleagues are going to learn so much from your different experiences. So to get into it, I'll start off with Mike. So Mike, you were a student in the 90s, and I know you were a student of the football club. So to throw in at the deep end now, what was how do you correlate now with being such a successful job, but you look back to your volunteering time, and can you make any correlations to that, and then maybe just tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on when you look back over your career?
Yeah, no, definitely, Ross. And yes, I was a student of the 90s. Thanks for that. And I think probably I take the prize for being the oldest on the panel. I have a big birthday coming up this year, so I'm trying not to think about that too much. But I was at Heriot-Watt 1990 to 1994, 1 year connection with the university, which still goes strong today. In terms of sort of volunteering, and obviously played for the university, was social convener back in the day, and very much social part of playing football at Heriot-Watt was a massive part of my sort of student life. And then in my final year, I was fortunate enough to be voted club captain, and very much sort of involved in helping the club run. So even back in those days, I think I got a lot of enjoyment from football and playing football. But ultimately, the social aspects of it and the volunteering component parts were really important. And then, as you say, graduated in '94. I'd actually qualified as a football referee very young, 16 years old, in the northeast of England, before I actually came up to Edinburgh and joined Heriot-Watt. And when I finished university, I realised that I was never going to be the greatest goalkeeper in the world, and went back to refereeing. And again, the refereeing career, very long. Relatively successful, but I think for me, what was important in refereeing was being able to give something back to a sport from which I had gained so much enjoyment. And I think that's definitely something that I think has kind of lived with me throughout both the refereeing career and then obviously professional career. Working for Standard Life Aberdeen, based in Edinburgh for the last 27 years this year. So joined as a graduate trainee. So I literally went from the campus at Riccarton to Princess Street in Edinburgh, or George Street in Edinburgh, to work for Standard Life. And that sort of proximity to Heriot-Watt, I think, has remained as a referee. I went back refereed the football teams. I've organised alumni events for the university to come into Standard Life and talk to us as prospective employers about what we're doing. And then latterly, I've joined the court of Heriot-Watt, and I think what that's allowed me to do is give something back to the university, from which obviously I think has played a pretty seminal part in my life and my career to date. So that's a bit of a potted history of how I got from where I was to I guess where I am today.
And knowing you as I do, very typically humble of you there, Mike. Mike's got an extremely senior role in Aberdeen Standard, and we'll go and maybe touch on that in a second. I think there are some people on the call who are maybe combining their academics alongside their sport and their volunteering, and the concept of dual career is really, really interesting, and it'd be my hope and wish that students leaving us are really ready, for what the rest of life can bring. From your experiences, and I will just quickly touch on the fact that Mike, again, humble, he was a FIFA top grade referee as well. So this isn't just normal park stuff. So Mike, with all of that experience, how did you manage that?
So I think first and foremost, it's about balance. So for me, it was always about trying to, work out sort of the relative priorities of things. Ultimately, as you say, having a sort of, really important role in Standard Life Aberdeen, effectively being clear about, what my main responsibilities were, having a good team around me, ultimately who could help me balance that. I think in terms of, getting into a regular routine. So obviously training was really important. Fitness has become increasingly important in the refereeing world over, goodness knows, the last 20 odd years. Fitness is really key. So actually being able to sort of compartmentalize things, I think, is really important, and knowing what you've got to try and achieve this week. I think the other thing that I'm a big believer in is tracking your progress. And people often say to me, why 27 years later you're still in the same organization? And I guess for me, when I think about things in life and I think about the things that I want to do, I kind of distill it all down to almost sort of like three things. One is, am I enjoying what I do? Because actually, you've got to enjoy what you do in order to get a sense of satisfaction, in order to be able to commit, in order to be able to ultimately take some satisfaction from what you're doing. The other thing for me was about development, and thinking about, okay, am I developing in my role? Am I developing as a referee? Am I developing as a person? And therefore, the things that I'm involved in are helping me develop skills, develop experiences that I come back to enjoying to do. And then the other is, do you feel valued? And value isn't always about what you get paid, but ultimately it's about feeling that what you can contribute is appreciated by other people. So I think, in terms of the things I've involved myself in, whether it be my career in Standard Life, whether it be refereeing, whether it be volunteering to be on the court at Heriot-Watt or to be a trustee of the local Edinburgh Children's Hospital charity, it is always about, am I getting some sense of enjoyment from it? Is it giving me the opportunity to learn new things, to share experiences? And then actually, do I feel valued? I think you've got to sort of have something which guides you, because you can do a whole bunch of stuff which will keep you busy. But actually, is it meaningful? Is it making a difference? And actually, are you just doing it because you feel you need to, or actually because you want to do it, you enjoy it, and you get some sense of satisfaction from it? So they're the guiding things, I think, that have ultimately sort of helped me. I think, I mean, one thing without, shadow of a doubt, and we're all on technology today, technology has helped me no end in terms of being able to do all the things I've been able to do in my life. And there's no doubt that when I was away, enjoying European football trips, the fact that I could have a BlackBerry in my hand and I could reply to emails when I had some downtime was really important. So you've actually got to work out as well, what are the enablers that allow you to maintain a balance across the piece and be productive. And technology is a phenomenal assist, I think, in terms of allowing us all to balance what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve.
Mike, I could say this for the other colleagues who I know really well. We could spend an hour just speaking to you, and it would be so informative. A couple more, and then I'll pass on to other colleagues. Just something you stimulated in there about how you said one of the values, one of the guiding principles is about enjoyment. Can I jump in and say, I assume it isn't always been enjoyable, always been easy but there's an overwhelming enjoyment through the whole pain. Because to get to where you are, you would have had some upsets, some difficulties. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, and absolutely, you know, what I say is, you know, if I think about those three criteria, I don't wake up every day and think, crikey, I'm ecstatic about going to work today. But generally, you look at it over the piece, and actually, you have more up days than you have down days. Every day I didn't, you know, and I've obviously refereed you, Ross, and that was quite challenging back in the day. But, you know, I didn't think, you know, when I got a fixture on a Tuesday, and I think, crikey, and I've got to be careful which club I pick, because I know you've played for a few clubs. But if I was going to, if I was going to Cowdenbeath, which is not necessarily the biggest club in Scotland, then the enthusiasm might be a little bit sort of like, but in some respects, what you've got to do is put yourself in a position that every game you do, you're going to learn from something from, you're going to experience something from, and you've got to go with it. And I always said to myself, it doesn't matter where I referee, that's got to be my World Cup final, because it's not fair to me. It's not fair to the players I'm refereeing if I'm not giving it my best, and if I'm not interested. But there were definitely times when ultimately you've just got to be resilient, and you've got to roll with the punches, to know that ultimately you do enjoy it, even if in the moment sometimes you don't. And then actually you've got to be reflective and go away and think, okay, well, why didn't I enjoy that today? Was it because, you know, I didn't do enough preparation, or I didn't know the details of the teams or whatever? So I think you're absolutely right. Not every day is a great day, but ultimately it's about looking at that sort of balance over the piece, and then actually being pretty reflective and trying to work out, okay, what did I learn? What can I apply the next time to make that a better experience? And that's the same in the workplace. You know, not every day you go in and you're gonna, you know, get great feedback. Sometimes you'll get constructive feedback. Sometimes you'll be in a meeting, and you know, you can be put down, or you can feel to be made like your contribution doesn't count. But then what you've got to do is think, right, okay, why was that? Was I not prepared? Did I not know what somebody was going to ask me? Did I not read the room? Did I not read the body language of people? And therefore, what are the things that ultimately I can take on board to create a different outcome? I think when you have progressively a hard time, or ultimately you're not enjoying it, then that's when you've got to ask yourself, okay, am I doing the right things, or actually do I need to change? Do I need to change a role, or do I need to do something different? Yeah.
And I think just for everyone listening into the call, what resonates for me there is the resilience that's formed, and that bounce back ability, you know, and I know Mike has really valued exercise as part of his regime, and we're obviously big advocates of how exercise, how sport can be such a big player in building that resilience and that bounce back ability. One quick point, Mike, and then I will move on, because we only have the hour, is that it's inspiring listening to people like yourself who have been so successful and are so successful. For a lot of students who are on the call today, they probably can't see their connection to get to where you are. Could you maybe anchor this back, just maybe one or two little nuggets from how you can see how you made a change, or you did something at university when you were volunteering and it helped you get where you are?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I go back to, you know, my days in the football club and being social convener. I mean, first year, crikey, as a fresher, coming from the northeast of England, I'd never been, you know, I'd never lived away from home. So the football club for me became my family. It became the guys who ultimately you got to know, who you went out, you know, for drinks with on a Wednesday after you'd played in the Scottish Unis Leagues. On a Saturday at the weekend, I got to play in Lothian Amateurs or East of Scotland League, as it was back in those days. And actually then what I started to do was see different parts of Edinburgh with a group of guys who ultimately became your friends and your soulmates. And then the social organizer bit was basically a bit like organizing events, trying to create enthusiasm, trying to get people bought in. And then, you know, club captain was about organization. It was about making sure that, you know, we weren't just rabble, but effectively we tried to make sure the football club, you know, got onto a professional footing. We introduced things like club ties, which we wore on match days, and just some order. And then if I think about sort of all of those things, and then I think about sort of refereeing, or I think about my work in life, what I'm trying to do as a leader in our organization is help create an inclusive culture where ultimately people can fulfill their aspirations and contribute freely, no matter who they are or what background they ultimately come from. In terms of organization, it's about making sure that the bits of the business I've got responsibility for, I've got clear goals, clear plans. And actually, if I think back to my own student days about doing a dissertation, it's about having a clear plan or a clear goal as to what was my dissertation about, how am I going to get from an idea to take that through to actually, you know, implementing something that is output at the end that I can generate. So I think there's loads of things that students do during their student experience that you just do, you experience it, but you effectively just got to think about those things, package them up, and they're your outputs, and they become ultimately, you know, your brand, and that's what you become known for, and that's, you know, what you become sort of experienced in, and effectively. So I think there's loads of things I've taken from my student life and applied it to the different parts of my life, and that's why. And I also think Heriot-Watt is pretty unique in terms of the whole campus. I mean, clearly there are other campus-based universities, higher education institutes, but I do think Riccarton is a very special place. And effectively, even now when I go back, and I've clearly not been for a little while because of COVID, but for court meetings, there's always that affiliation I've got. And I think you touched on that earlier, this affiliation that you've got to want to do something. And a lot of that, I think, is because of the experience I had at university, and felt like it was a very inclusive campus with, you know, a bunch of people that you just enjoyed being with. And that, I think you take that and you look to try and create that, whatever you do, wherever you are.
No, thanks. And I think one of the things that struck me just in this first part of the conversation, Mike, was you can see how much passion, but you can also just I can probably connect with how much fun you had. You know, and often in a world where there's such a focus on drive, yeah. You know, these experiences were life-changing, and you didn't know it at the time, but you were doing it whilst having fun. So some really, really good stuff there in what Mike says. And I'll segue now on to, I've been told to use a chronology. So the next oldest then is Ross Simpson. I must declare Ross as one of my best friends, and we live together, but that's not why we've asked him to come on to the call today. Unfortunately, he's chosen to wear a University of Edinburgh top. And I'll let you make your own judgment out of that, those who are competitive. But he's a man, he's still got his Heriot-Watt connection, I can see that. But he's a man I hold in really, really high regard. And a focus, while Mike we're talking about that dual career aspect, Ross has had a different look, if you like, because coming into university, Ross, you focused on sport being fun, and it's now your career. Could you maybe go on just to talk about that connection and maybe highlight some of the positive experiences you've had in between time?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the invite, Ross. It's great to be amongst Heriot-Watt friends, and as Mike was saying there, certainly lots of nostalgia thinking back to my Riccarton days. I was part of the hockey club, and very fortunate of all the good memories that I got, including a wife and loads of best friends that are still good friends to this day, all from Heriot-Watt. So lots of fun memories and a job, as Ross said. So yeah, I think, as Ross said, when I first went to Heriot-Watt, I actually had aspirations to go into management consultancy, you know, Standard Life, one of the companies I applied to there. That was kind of the dream when I started, but sport had always been my life. I'd played a lot of rugby and hockey kind of growing up, and just naturally at Heriot-Watt, as Mike said, the hockey club became the family, best friends, lived with all the guys for 4 years. And it was actually in second year I got kind of thrown under the bus and got made club president. I won't lie, the hockey club was an absolute shambles. We were in debt to the rugby club to about £800. We're probably on the naughty list with the sports union more often than not. So there was a lot of stuff that we needed to do over a couple of years. And actually one of the highlights was sports ball in my last year. The hockey club won most developed club. And actually at the time I thought, developed club, that's not the best award to win. But looking back, actually, as Mike said there, was that kind of group effort was recognised by the sports union that the hockey club had probably gone from the worst run club to one of the best. And I'm pleased to see that's still the case for all those hockey people that are on the call. But I guess to touch on Ross's point there, at the time, I suppose I didn't realize all the stuff that I was, all the opportunities that were being given to me in terms of, you know, having to deal with tricky friends within the hockey club, dealing with debt, you know, getting called into the sports union on behalf of the hockey club because something else had gone wrong. All those scenarios at the time seemed a bit onerous, but actually now looking back on it and having to go through the same with some of the sports clubs at Edinburgh, I realised actually how much I learned in terms of career development, you know, feeling more comfortable in those kind of challenging situations. So I learned a lot through my volunteering experiences within the hockey club. And actually, when I got to third year, I got into the sports union executive, and I just loved the kind of wider opportunity of looking after all the clubs, not just the hockey club. You know, there's a lot of good rivalry at Heriot-Watt, and that was always, I'm sure that's still the case between football and netball and rugby, whatever it may be. It's friendly. But seeing the work that the executive do and some of the other volunteers kind of really inspired me to try and do more. And then in my last year, exec again as vice president, I thought I'd like to do this for another year. So I ran for sports president, and I put a lot of the kind of job offers on hold. So been to the assessment centres at Standard Life and everything, and I thought, yeah, that's kind of the road I'm going to go down, the graduate schemes. And I was just fortunate in my last year when I was the sports president that I made loads of great contacts, and I'm sure Ross will touch on it, but just loads of different volunteering that I did kind of opened my network up outside of the Riccarton campus, and actually got a job offered to me at Scottish University Sport through my year as sports president. And I guess I've not really looked back in terms of getting out of sport. I absolutely love it. And as Ross said, now I'm really fortunate to be head of sport at Edinburgh Union and work with students and work within student sport, and the variety that you guys will all appreciate, from dealing with athletes at the top end to people that just want to have fun with their friends. It's a really rewarding career to have. So hopefully that touches on it a bit, Ross.
It does, and I'll bring some more into that. I think one of the things for students and colleagues listening into the call that stood out to me in Ross's chat there is about how he didn't necessarily connect everything to a career where Mike is right now. Some of it was just opening doors at the time. And if Ross only came and only got involved in the hockey club, he would have met his wife, because I know Nick and she's a close friend of mine as well. Fair enough. But actually the people that he's met, the experiences he's had, would nowhere near be as vast and as wide and varied. And that's one thing I would like to connect back about. If anybody's hesitant about putting their best foot forward to volunteer, 99% of the time, it's an amazing experience, and that's the thing that carries on. So, Ross, just to give up almost a bit of lightheartedness and a bit of inspiration, could you maybe touch on two? I can maybe ask you if there's a better ones, please do, but World University Games and maybe Zambia, please, and just touch on them because they're pretty inspirational to me.
Yeah, ones that I certainly got a lot of enjoyment out of. So I'll start with Volunteer Zambia. There's an international volunteering program, and it's a collaboration between 7 universities, and it's called the Wallace Group. And essentially each summer we try and send about 25 to 30 students out to Zambia and use sport to drive change in a number of different areas, from education to, you know, some more kind of fundamental serious stuff that's going on within Zambia. And I think it was about 3 years ago, I went out to Zambia to kind of look at the project and see whether Edinburgh University could add to that program. And it's not just about the kind of volunteer tourism, as some people, it's not just about 6 Edinburgh University students going out and having a good life-changing experience. It's about making sure they have an impact as well. And there's a continuum I like to kind of talk about in terms of the student experience is obviously absolutely fundamental, but there has to be an impact within the country. So essentially, it's a year-long program where the students go through a lot of training, they do a lot of volunteering within Edinburgh, upskilling, and then they get to go out to Zambia for 6 weeks at the end of it with colleagues from 6 other universities, and they work with a government organisation there called Sport in Action, which is led by the Zambian government. So it's an absolutely amazing experience for students. They actually get to work with volunteers within Zambia, but also that are led by a government organisation. And my personal experience, it was life-changing in terms of the impact that the students were having on an annual basis, using sport. You know, get the kids together, do some sport, but then add some education within that, and just really, really inspiring stuff. And I think the thing that we're really trying to focus on now is the sustainability of it. So again, it just can't be about sending students having a good time each year and then there's nothing out with that summer program. So we actually now fund a position to stay there all year round to make sure that the work that the students do upskills volunteers within Zambia so that they can carry on a lot of the work that the students were doing within that kind of 3-month program. And then when we go back the following summer for the next 3 months, you know, we've not lost a whole year of activities. So yeah, Volunteer Zambia is one that's close to my heart, and you know, we've missed 2 years of actually being able to send students out there, which is sad, but we'll have to make up for it for the next couple of years. World University Games, I guess, is complete other end of the spectrum, and I know Ross has had some experiences with that as well. So 2 years ago now, 3 years ago now, I was fortunate enough to be selected as the Deputy Chef de Mission for the GB team to go out to the World University Games. For those who don't know what the World University Games is, it's actually bigger than the Commonwealth Games. It's pretty similar to an Olympics, but it's obviously students from universities around the world. You have an athletes village. There's about 15 to 20 sports, and it's, you know, top end. There's a lot of kind of former GB medalists that have competed. You know, Jessica Ennis was one of the kind of first British athletes that went through that pathway, and many more. I think when Ross was in Russia, the GB men's football team got to the final and played Russia, and there was a couple of guys who were on £1 million contracts at Lokomotiv Moscow and stuff. So high standard of sport that's been played. But certainly my experience was, you know, we had about 200 athletes, a good support network, about 40 staff, from doctors to team managers to physios. And essentially my role was to look after all the staff that were looking after the athletes to make sure that the athletes were able to perform to their best of abilities on any given day. And my experience was quite interesting because it was in Naples in Italy, and hopefully there's no Italians on the call. I don't want to do any disjustice, but everything was very last minute and they were very laid back. So there was a lot of kind of stressing and lots of last minute reacting to situations. But again, revert back to all the volunteering experiences I had up until that point. I'd been in a lot of those situations, maybe on a smaller scale, and just knew how to deal with it in terms of keeping calm, having thought through some different situations, engaging the right people, networking. You've no idea how important networking is in terms of any opportunity I had to speak to a counterpart from a different country. I did. I made so many really good friends from loads of different nations, and you all swap kit at the end of it, and I've got loads of different kit from those nations. But you just phone up and say, you know, the South African delegate, have you heard about this? How are you dealing with it? Or walk into the German office and say, what's going on here? And you know, there's lots to be learned from that networking and working together. But yeah, Naples was interesting. I think two funny stories from that is, normally there's an athletes village. Essentially they ran out of time and money, so they procured 2 cruise ships, and that was the athletes village. So there was 5,000 people on cruise ship. It was actually perfect athletes village if you think about it. It was custom built, but it did mean it took about 45 minutes to get on and off every time, because you had the game security, and then you had the port security, because you're technically leaving Italy every time you go onto the boat. And then the other one was a sport-specific table tennis. We arrived on site, and the training facility, bear in mind this is middle of summer in Italy, the training facility was a black marquee. So we went in to warm up, and it was 55 degrees in the marquee. I mean, I couldn't even walk around, let alone the athletes do any training. So we're looking at innovative ways for the guys to get good warm up and practice without having to be inside the sauna that was that. But again, gave me some good experience of dealing with kind of challenging situations. And you know, these guys had been working their whole life for that point to get to, you know, major games finals, and you know, it was important that we worked for them. So hopefully that covers off those two, Ross.
Brilliant, and 2 excellent stories at either end of the spectrum. And some people, certainly at Heriot-Watt, you know, we've got ambitions and we want our students to be changing the world. And if you take it little examples that you've heard so far, that at a micro level, that's absolutely happening. You know, scale that up with all the volunteering that happens. It can happen at a macro level as well. Just to touch on, I'm going to invite Katie in a second with another different strand, but Mike spoke his 30-year experience. Ross spoke there about his 15-year experience. He's in really going to the top. Actually, just a segue, I remember how you learn as a volunteer. We had a whole GB football team alive at Moscow airport just to be told that our plane had been delayed 12 hours because they wanted to send some delegates. So you've got to think on your feet. You've got to be practical right at that point. So I remember leading a stretching session in the middle of Moscow International Airport. So it was to high acclaim, I'm sure. But these are all the things that volunteering can teach you, because Ross started that by volunteering at a junior level in the hockey club. And so for 15 years worth of saying yes, putting his best foot forward, giving up his time, he's then almost a world-class volunteer. And I mean that as a compliment. And those connectiveness can start here while you're studying with us at Heriot-Watt University, colleagues and students. So Ross, thanks for that. And we may have a time to come back to you. Let me segue across to Katie, who again, Katie's a former sports president, and we'll touch on that. But Katie, particularly interesting. I'll set the scene, and then you just fly with however route you want to go, because it's all interesting.
Sure.
Katie studied chemistry, and now works in international events, but in between time worked in the sport industry. You join up the dots for us, please, Katie.
Sure. So a slightly different path, but still the same. I echo nearly everything that both Ross and Mike have previously touched on in terms of the value of volunteering. And hopefully some of the stuff I can talk about can echo that and also resonate with you locally at that level. So came from Aberdeen. I'd grown up oil and gas. My natural thought was I'm going to go into chemistry, use something I found interesting and enjoyed. Landed at Heriot-Watt as my first choice and didn't look back. Naturally saw sport as just a hobby, something to do on the side to make friends. And very quickly, I found that was the route and the lifestyle I was taking, that I was there at university to do a chemistry degree. I would turn up, I would do my work, I would find the subject interesting. But the people I would hang out with, the things that I would get value from, the things that I would enjoy was in the sport element. So I was a member of the netball club, and slowly but surely over the years became members of more clubs. So delved into hockey, which is also part of my experience, but also learned a new skill in Gaelic football, which for those that Heriot-Watt understand that's a very unique thing for us with the amount of international students over from Ireland that come. So learned some new skills, learned some new people, and gradually expanded that friend group. And I would say the community within my university experience predominantly was the sport element. I had connections within my degree, but that's where my outlets came from when I got enjoyment, but also to support me within struggles that you have day to day with the university life in terms of workload, managing your skill sets and those sorts of things. So that's where the fun, and that's where I wanted to spend my time. And then naturally with meeting people, my want from learning and engaging brought me into roles within the netball club, ended up being the netball president, as well as supporting the natural route of becoming an SU ambassador, which was very new when I was in post. I think it had only been in place 1 year prior to me, but those were the sorts of people, those ambassadors, that actually made an impact on my first week in Freshers Week. Those people in a yellow t-shirt were one of the only people I remember that actually made an impact of me on Freshers Week. So I knew that was something I wanted to do, and then slowly but surely became part of the exec, went on to be the vice president and then sports president. And those were really valuable experiences for me. And it's that networking and connection with people. The slowly you grow, the more people you meet, the more that it was valuable and you saw the enjoyment from it. And actually, I knew that I could go and do a chemistry degree, that I could go and do everything with it, but it didn't give me the passion that the sport element had given me. And actually it was when I was doing sports president I decided I can have that, I can go and do it if I want to do it, because I've got the degree, I've got the experience, but actually I want to take this risk and trial. Is this something I want to do? And because I get enjoyment from it. And that's what found me being in in working for Netball Scotland within the competition and events elements, and that's the sort of stuff I enjoyed in terms of organising, empowering people, and that's the transferable skills I definitely recognised and resonated with me from my time as within volunteering, within being the president, working with a team underneath you that are supporting you to be able to deliver the objectives of the club, but also within across the whole sports union and the fellow clubs. So these are volunteers. They're not people that are paid to do anything. So empowering them to want and do something is so important, because you can't force them to do anything. But these people are absolutely essential, and people will always be essential in any walk of life, whether it's in a volunteering aspect, whether it's a work aspect. Having the people to buy in to what you're trying to do is fundamental. So I can recognize that back when I was at uni, and I can recognise it now as an event manager at the SEC Hydro, where I'm running 13,000 people gigs and I have 300 staff underneath that need to make that. Every single one of those people, security, cleaners, the caterers, the people on the technical side, they have to buy into what you're doing and want to help to be able to do it. But these people are getting paid, so there's more incentive. But if you can empower the people at the volunteer end who aren't getting paid to turn up, that want to be there and can buy into that, ultimately that's the sort of thing that's allowed me to be able to love what I do, to see the passion. And actually I reflect on when I'd stepped away from president, I got a note through from Scottish Unis on a leadership programme that they were running, and there was a member of the Sports Union Ambassador Programme who had reflected on the impact I had made on them without even knowing it. So unconsciously, you don't even know the impact you're making on people, that they recognize the leadership skills in you. And that's the stuff that humbleizes you and makes you feel like what you're doing is value. And right back to what Mike was saying is like, do I feel valued? Am I getting value from it? And it doesn't need to be an award, but you need to feel like people are happy that you're going to be there. And so absolutely, university, best time of my life, and has definitely Heriot-Watt itself shaped who I am today in terms of my career path, but also has shaped me to still want to volunteer. So I'm a netball coach within the university still, so might say never letting go, but I'll let go when the time is right and I don't feel valued anymore. But those girls recognize that I turn up every week and I'm contributing, and not just a personal but professional aspect in terms of my mentor role, but also in the community aspect within Orium. So I'm vice president of one of the large community clubs within the environment, and we're really trying to pioneer what we're doing in Scotland. And I ultimately believe that the partnership with Heriot-Watt and Orium is allowing us to do that. So recognizing in both professional and personal has been so valuable to me. So thank you again for your time, because it's allowed me to be nostalgic on it and remember those fun times.
Absolutely. And I live and breathe it every day. And sometimes I even forget. I started in 2001 and I have never left. So a bit like Mike, I'm a lifer in the organisation that I'm involved in. And as long as it continues to give me that value, then I'm all in as well. Yeah, you already covered my next question, Katie. So maybe we can just touch on that, the fact that the impact of COVID, and we've maybe just got 1 minute if that's okay. But you had all these grand plans and majorly in events, and of course COVID's just absolutely taken that out, and you're on a sabbatical now.
Yeah.
Can you make any? There'll be a lot of that experience across the world, but what do you think sport and particularly volunteering did to help your resilience and how you've approached that adversity?
Absolutely. So coming from the events world, where it's used to having 13,000 people in a very small space, it's very anti-COVID, as you can imagine. So the events world has shut down. I was in the process of leading the planning for COP26, which is the climate change summit that's due to come to Scotland next year. That's on hold. Still plans to happen because it's such a valuable event and it's a needed at the moment in terms of the global pandemic. But what it has allowed me to do is take a step back from, okay, I finally found something that I knew I was good at and I knew that I enjoyed. So I'd find that was right to me. But right now, the world is telling me it's not happening. So how can I use the skill set that I've developed? So using something that Ross actually taught me when I was in sports union is about conscious incompetence to a scale of unconscious competence. So I'm sure there's a whole seminar that can be done on that, and the sports union will take that. But it's very much recognizing and not recognizing when you have a skill that can add value, and when you can play a part that can make a difference in the world. And so what it has done is allowed me to reflect on what those things that I'm good at and what events does, and it's transferable in terms of project management. So where are the transferable skills? Because ultimately an event is a project. So I find myself working within the NHS right now, doing what's right and what needs to be done to support the wider pandemic in terms of how do we tackle COVID-19 and how do we recover and reform as a National Health Service. And so reflecting on the actual volunteering elements, that process of recognizing what I was good at and maybe what I needed to that I didn't even know that was part of me or something that I was doing or that I could be better at has allowed me to develop the skill set that has made me a transferable individual. So doesn't matter if it's the NHS, doesn't matter if it's a climate change summit, doesn't matter if it's a Westlife gig, I can use those skills to be able to attempt to get an outcome with the information that you're there. So in terms of stakeholders, in terms of networking management, meeting the people, creating those connections, planning, having an overarching understanding of the concept. So working right down to when you're in volunteering within a netball club, is just understanding what's our purpose and why are we here. The student experience, I want those students that are in first year to have that recognizable experience that I had. So things like that. I mean, I started, my volunteering journey actually started not through me looking for it, through someone recognizing something in me. So I was a first year, and it was actually the sports union president at the time who was in the netball club that said, hey, I think you have a go. Why don't you be the kit manager? Very small, seems like a very tiny job in comparison, but the impact it can make can be so important. And that's how I've gone from being a kit manager who just wanted to do that job really well, to then growing my skill set, growing my understanding of the subject, the people, the connections around it, to be able to slowly build that bubble of people and influence that has allowed me to go and have the confidence to be able to deliver with a team of 300 people that are running a 13,000 people gig. So it's been valuable in that sense and very transferable in that.
Absolutely superb. And what we probably won't have a lot of time for a Q&A, but I think because we only had the hour, and there's three really amazing, informative experiences, all different, and but shows the wide variety that volunteering can offer you. So Amber, just segueing in, and you're our youngest panel member. I hope that's okay to say, other panel members. Amber's our current sports president, and maybe just ask you just to quickly, if we can move on to other questions. We've got 4 minutes. Just summarise what you've taken as the key learnings from the conversation so far.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. So I just want to say I'm starting to feel a little bit like a student on the webinar, because I feel like I've learned so much from Katie, Ross and Mike already. I didn't think I'd be able to relate as much as I am right now, but as much as Ross and Katie have been in the same position that I am, I feel like our experiences are so different because we're in a different world. And I didn't think I'd be able to relate to someone like Mike as much, but the fact that he was talking so much about having up and down days has made me actually reflect on where I am in my work right now, because of course my job situation being president is completely different to any other president. So it's made me realize that it's all right that some days can be down, because it's not what I thought it would be, but also how you can come up from that. And then just noticing that what I'm doing right now, I can go into so many different possibilities after this. So I'm actually really excited to see what I do after this job. So yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that I'm really just relating and excited to see what happens after learning from these guys.
And Amber, and for colleagues who are in Malaysia and Dubai listening in, please do speak to your respective student and sports councils, etc., because we're absolutely sure that these opportunities exist in your locale, if not speaking actually to local organisations, because not everything has to happen in the Heriot-Watt bubble. But can you just talk quickly before in case we do run out of time later on, just about the opportunities that we have at Heriot-Watt right now at the Edinburgh Sports Union, and what you were really hoping for as a result of this seminar itself.
Yeah, so we have a lot of opportunities, and I don't even think I realised it when I came into Heriot-Watt. So we've got, from our club committees, you can be part of all of our 32 clubs, and they all have their separate committees, so you can be part of those. You can go from being a kit manager to president. Other clubs are very different, so they might have different committee roles, such as I've came from a dance background, so they have captains in there that you can get involved with, vice captains, so little roles, but still so valuable to be part of them. You've also got our ambassador scheme, what Katie was touching on, and it's great to even just wear those yellow tops. I mean, yellow is now my favourite colour, not just because of the job, but I used to hate it before I came to Heriot-Watt. So even just to get to wear those and run about Orium and shout about how much you love the sports union and speak to new people, that's great to get involved with that. And you can move on to being part of the SU executive committee, and get involved with different remits and different clubs and working at a higher aspect. And also that's part of being, you can be a vice president through that as well, and you can work your way up to being in where I am now, so the sports president. So there's so much to get involved with, but even just reaching out to those club committees that we have now, or the ambassadors, there's so many ways that you can be involved. So I would definitely encourage it if it's something that you would like to think of doing.
And Catherine, I see Catherine that was a beautiful segue. It was almost like it was planned. Catherine's just posted a link in the chat here about the volunteers, the opportunities that we have. But please do continue to speak with us. And even if you're in another country and you're looking for some advice, we are one Heriot-Watt group. So if we can help in any way, please do speak to us. Now, panel, we're into our last 10 minutes, and I've been sworn, because I like to talk, not to go over. So, and I should say, I forgot to say this, Mike, I'm sure you'll agree, I was a mere pussycat on the field in your refereeing. So, right, I've got 3 questions, and then I'm going to just ask you to go back into what life was like. Amber, I'm going to focus on Mike, Kate, and Katie and Ross, okay? And you can just come in with a golden nugget at the end. So, Mike, quick fire questions, and some of them are, this is from other individuals. How important do you, as an employer, and I know you maybe don't look at CVs now, but you represent the business, how important are things that we've spoken about today to businesses such as yourself?
So important. I think effectively, having a rounded experience, volunteering, because it's what you want to do. I think a lot of people study for qualifications because they think they have to. Actually, what the volunteering does is show and demonstrate that people are really rounded and actually are doing things for themselves, and they have motivations, to do the right thing. So massively important.
Brilliant. And Ross, jumping on, because it is quick fire, we've got another question here about an individual who's not sure about running for a post because it would be running against a friend. Can you relate that? What would be your advice to be in that situation?
Yeah, so it's a good one. It's always one that comes up, and I think there's 2 parts to it. I think one, you've got to be selfish to yourself, because you've got to be ambitious, and obviously go about it the right way, be open, transparent, and really go for it. I think the second thing that you'll learn from it is already thinking about it is a challenge. You're putting yourself in a difficult position. It's thought-provoking. You're thinking, how am I going to deal with this? You will learn from that experience later on. So I would definitely always encourage anyone to get out their comfort zone and do challenging things. And that sounds like a really good challenge. So do it, and you'll definitely learn from it in the future.
And on that, and this is a serious point, because Chris and I have a joke about it. Chris is a real established leader, Chris Seller, who's not on the call, but just wanted to talk. I remember he ran for sports president and just narrowly missed it at the University of Stirling. And at that point, he could have just said, well, that's not for me. If anything, that made him who he is and how successful he's went on to be. So another example of giving it a go, and a good advice there, Ross, because it can be quite difficult, especially in with your peers, isn't it? So thank you. Katie, jumping onto yourself, a question here about how can an individual grow their confidence, and maybe just touch on that about what sport and or volunteering has done for you, and maybe in any setbacks you've.
Yeah, so resonates very well with me. I wasn't a very confident person in school coming into university, but actually just the small connections you make if you meet one person a day, just a small little conversation slowly allows you to open up when you, especially at Heriot-Watt in the Riccarton campus, if you walk down that corridor, since you're all on that same base, you start to meet these people every day, and those connections just grow and grow, and confidence doesn't come overnight. It takes years, and especially for someone who had the ambition to run for sports union president, I knew that wasn't a 2-week campaign that was going to allow me to get into that role. That was a two-year worth of connections, growing those connections between the clubs, between friends, to be able to resonate that you're a true person. And again, what I was saying about buying in, and I think you just it's easy to say just trust in yourself, but I'm a big believer of trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it's not right, so go with that and just try and slowly gain those connections through meeting people. And it doesn't need to last, it doesn't need to stay, but it can be through your course, it can be through your club, it can be through another club, or it can be through the sports union office where you're just learning more about a subject that allows you to everyone gains confidence in different ways, whether it's subject matter, it's knowing your audience. Find what works for you and just take it a small step at a time. But if you can start that journey early in first year, second year, you will thrive when you come to fourth year, when there might be those bigger opportunities that come your way, and beyond after university life, when you can be able to really show that in a work dynamic to an expected employer.
Brilliant. And I think life isn't a straight line, is it, Katie? So there's the ups and downs, and what better environment to go and make mistakes and try new things than at university. You know, it's a bit more complicated now. Ross and I maybe get to go on an adventure in the woods with our kids, and that's our day, you know, whereas what you can do at university with all the time you have and all the freedom for the majority is really there. So we're now reaching the near the end, but we've got a couple of additional quick fires, and I'll go in reverse order. And I'm going to ask everyone the same question. So we've got a minute maximum each, and I might have to cut you off. But Katie, what would you say to your first year self now with the experience you have?
It was going to be trust my gut, but I've already used that one. So I'm going to use a different one, which is you can do it all. Now, I'm sure some people will say, whoa, hold on. You can do it all if you want to. I was running for sports union president on the same day that I had to hand in my dissertation for my fourth year chemistry. It takes discipline. You need to be accountable to yourself and others. You need to understand your responsibilities and what to say yes and what to say no to. But you can do it all if you want to, but you need to learn those skills about being disciplined to yourself from the start. Superb.
Ross, same question.
I had a lot of fun in first year, Ross. I'm not sure I'd change too much, but maybe my wife would say otherwise. But no, jokes aside, I think one is value every opportunity you have, every interaction. I think there's certainly some opportunities I have that I just didn't put 100% into, and I look back and think, missed opportunity there. So don't undersell yourself in terms of any opportunity that you have. And I think part of that, we've talked, everything's about people, and all this advice everyone's given is about people. I think value every single person you have the opportunity to speak to, because everyone's got something really interesting. But you've got to give them that time to find it. So I think I'd have spent a lot more time getting to know the people that my initial reaction was not my kind of person. I think I'd have done a lot more to just meet and get to know more people that were kind of out of my normal comfort zone.
Thanks, Ross. And last but not least, Mike.
Yeah, hard act to follow these two, actually. I've taken loads of notes from what people have been saying here. I've learned a lot on this call, which is fantastic. I would just say be the best you can be. You know, I've had lots of people who draw comparisons with other people. I'm not going to be as good as them. I'm not going to be as going to do as much as they did. That doesn't matter. It's all about being the best that you can ultimately be. And I think you know, Ross's point about you know, effectively, you know, if somebody, you know, you perceive somebody wins at your expense, it's never about that. It's about ultimately looking at, you know, what happened, what could you do differently, and actually how can you help them. You know, I never got to referee a Scottish Cup final, but I'm sure I helped many Scottish referees get to the stage where they refereed a Scottish Cup final. So I don't look back with regret. I look back and think, actually, I did my bit. I helped those guys get on, and therefore I made my contribution. And that contribution, value your own contribution. Never self-deprecate, because, you know, just be the best you can be.
It's fantastic from everyone. And I suppose my overarching, I wrote it down, I was like, wow, someone who's had the career to date of Mike is saying that he's learning from all of these things, and that probably epitomizes everything that I would certainly want from colleagues and students across the world listening in today, is that it's such a great, positive, fun learning experience, and it really, really can change your life, and a lot of what we do changes other people's. So what an amazing way to finish. And Amber, we've got 1 minute left. Is there anything salient things that you want to come in and summarize on?
I think just what everyone has said is take it away, look into it, speak to people around you, and reach out to us as well. But the best thing I would say is just get involved, because as you can see, it's made a difference in all of our lives, and it's such a good thing to do. So I would just say, please get involved, or even look into doing it, because it's a great experience. So hopefully everyone's feeling as inspired as we are on the panel today, and can leave and be a little bit excited about what's just happened. And yeah, it's
a nice way to embrace life, is to leave, to try and leave with more energy than when you came in with something, you know, really positive. And I really mean that I hope that so many people took a lot from it. We're going to use this in terms of next steps. Those who have engaged, we're really thankful, and thank you for the questions. We didn't manage to get through everything in the hour, but we got through a lot. Hopefully you've learned a lot. We'll be sharing this for people to have in a seminar form, you know, and download that. And we'll also be using some of these golden snippets and other social media elements. So thank you for everybody who's engaging. A particular thank you to the panel who've given up time in advance and today. Really, really heartfelt thanks from us in the Sports Union, and hope everybody has a good afternoon or evening wherever you're based today.